Endeavor, Horizon of the Infinite, Episode 8. Endeavor to Gaze into the Void, Part 2. By Elton Garr. Being the lead engineer of the Endeavor was easy. Being an engineer, on the other hand, meant 12-hour shifts, because the Endeavor was the first of its type, which compounded the simple maintenance that every new ship had. But just like the rest of the engineers, he loved the job and couldn't imagine doing anything else. And then there were days like today. Today the Endeavor had been covered in a dusting of radiation, which meant they had to recalibrate every sensor, had gotten dragged into an anomaly, been attacked by a ship that tried to pull off pieces of the hull, been ripped through space-time by its own gravity defenses, and worst of all, someone let Mick pilot the ship. The last wasn't entirely fair. They were being attacked before he took the chair, but a trained pilot would have known the tolerances of the ship and not blown out 3 different subsystems. Systems that Patch didn't have time to fix because he was in a spacesuit, sealing hull breaches to keep the AI from freaking out. They had been damned lucky that the Endeavor had kept it together as well as it had. Because of them, they had only lost 5 people. It had made a split-second decision to seal all the doors to the crew quarters on that side of the ship. But no matter how much he told the Endeavor that it had done the right thing, it wouldn't accept that. Which was why Patch was in a spacesuit inside the mobile airlock while trying to talk down the ship's AI.
I simply do not think that it's a good idea to use an AI who has killed multiple members of the crew,
the Endeavor said.
Have you discussed this with anyone else?
Patch asked as the last of the air was drained from the plastic airlock and the door to Steward Craig's quarters finally slid open.
I have not. Though I plan to put in a formal request for deactivation to the captain once the immediate situation is over.
I strongly disagree with the basic premise that you killed anyone. But we also don't have a backup AI, so you're stuck with the job until we reach space dock.
There was a pause. Any pause by an AI long enough for a human to hear was intentional, or because it was processing something. That was fine. The Endeavor needed time. So rather than continue, Patch said,
You shouldn't watch my camera for this part. It won't be good for you.
There was yet another glitch. Nothing major, just a flicker of systems as the Endeavor tried to process everything. Patch was just glad that the rest of the crew didn't have the same connection to the AI he did. Because while no one would say it was wrong to seal those doors to save the rest of the crew, obsessing over it was a problem that could get it disabled. Once inside the room, Turo stopped thinking about the Endeavor and started thinking about his sister. He hadn't known Steward Craig long. Her job in food services meant he saw her almost every day, but rarely actually interacted with her. She looked almost alive. There was some red around her lips, and her skin was bruised, but beyond that, he could imagine her pushing the food cart into the engine room and everyone gathering around. Trying to drive out the memories, he closed his eyes, but he saw his sister on her last day. Kayla was the one who should be here. The one who should have survived. It had been his assignment to scout the bore holes. He had been trained to do the job. But the borehole had felt like their backyard, and going out to repair it was just a fun adventure. He shook his head, breaking himself out of it. This was absurd. The short blonde woman looked nothing like his tall, thin, black-haired sister. And focusing on a mistake he had made 20 years ago was going to get people hurt here and now if he wasn't careful. The room itself reminded him a bit of his sister, too. That thought made him smile, until he remembered why it looked like a tornado had ripped through it. Unlike his sister's room, the half-overturned bed and papers and clothes thrown around wasn't because she refused to clean. It was because the decompression that killed the steward had scattered everything. Any good thought was driven away as he moved the steward's body. He tried to think of her as nothing more than another piece of debris, while also being careful not to damage the body. The doctor would preserve it, to return to her family. With that done, the repair was easy. A mix of temporary welding and sealing foam that would hold until something more permanent could be done. Then he said,
Endeavor. Please raise the atmosphere in this room to 15%. I want to see if there are any other holes.
I'll see if I can do that without killing anyone,
the Endeavor said, and just as Patch was thinking he was going to have to speak to someone about the AI, there was a beep of the captain contacting him.
How can I help you, Captain?
We're approaching the planet. I'd like you to lead the survey,
the captain said.
I understand. Nothing about this feels like a natural phenomenon. Still, I'd expect the commander to lead something this important,
Patch said.
The commander and Regan are on restricted duty. They got tossed around pretty good in the shuttle.
Patch considered the situation for a moment, then said,
Computer, secure the channel.
The communication was already secure from most of the crew, but the Endeavor could ignore that, and often did. It could probably ignore the more secure channel too if it wanted, but its programming should make that uncomfortable. The captain, who had already sounded serious, said,
What's wrong?
Hopefully nothing. But the Endeavor isn't taking the deaths well. So sending in a drone to repair the breaches isn't a good idea. If Commander Hester needs something to do, I'd request that she deal with the bodies rather than one of the junior engineers.
Can you trust the Endeavor on the away mission?
Patch thought about it and said,
It won't hurt anyone. But I am worried that the stress may permanently damage it.
I'll send Mick. He won't relax until he's made up for blowing out the navigation subsystems,
the captain said.
We're already down one shuttle,
Patch said, then decided it was a good thing they were on a secure channel. The security officer was likely in the same room as the captain, and it wasn't his fault that he had been put in the piloting station in the middle of combat, and making jokes about it wouldn't make it better. The choice of where to land on the planet was limited enough to make it easy. It was tidally locked. Any planet in the habitable zone of a white dwarf was going to be. That left half of the planet far too hot and half far too cold, with a narrow band where people could live comfortably. There were no people. But there were signs that people had been here. A few worn stones cut into bricks sat in a pile. A short section of road remained, but was so old and worn it was barely clear it was a road. Through all of it were deep grooves, as if something had scooped out sections of the landscape in long straight lines. But even most of those were old.
Whatever was here, it hasn't been for a long time,
Mick said.
but the anomaly is still active,
Patch said. He didn't bother to point out that if it was a self-perpetuating anomaly, there was a good chance that they were exploring their new home. From what he could tell, most of the crew had worked that out on their own. The most frustrating part of this entire survey was that while there were signs that this had been a technologically advanced race, based on things like the roads and the ship that had attacked the Endeavor, there was no technology anywhere. With nothing else to do, Patch picked one of the more recent grooves in the landscape and began to follow it. It might be 1,000 years old or 10, but it looked more recent than anything else he saw. It soon crossed an even more recent groove that he followed. This one was recent enough that the dirt was still clear, and a few hardy plants grew up in it. Then he saw the first actual piece of technology since he had arrived on the planet. Behind him, Mick cursed in a language that Patch didn't understand. It wasn't identical to the ship they had seen in orbit, but it had been made by the same people. There was no doubt. This one was smaller, though not as small as he would like. Its tentacles stretched out in front of it and stabbed into the ground and dragged the center, including the large metal scoops along the ground, digging the grooves they had seen as it harvested everything in its path. Patch's engineering mind couldn't help but work out the mechanics of the machine. It was impossible to tell how old it was, because he was certain it was using everything it took in to both fuel itself and rebuild. Next to him, Mick drew his weapon. Patch was glad to have a security officer with him. But he doubted his gun would damage the surface of the machine.
Let's not assume it's aggressive. I'm not even sure if it's got an AI, or is just running an algorithm,
Patch said.
The version of the machine in orbit attacked the ship and nearly tore us to shreds. I suspect it's just gathering resources. If that's correct, then this thing might attack the shuttle, but I don't think it's likely to care about anything organic.
Patch was quickly proved wrong. The machine didn't move, but one of the enormous claws swung around, and faster than he could have expected, it grabbed Mick and lifted him into the air. The metal of the machine could have crushed him, but it didn't. It lifted him carefully and moved him towards the gaping hole at its center. It looked the same as all the others, and Patch frantically tried to save the man from being turned into fuel for the massive machine. There was no solution. This was why he should never be put in command. He should have refused the captain's request and explained to him that when he was in command, people died. Everything in Patch told him to run. But he couldn't. He had run when his sister had been trapped. He had gone for help, but it had been far too late. So instead, he grabbed his tools and moved towards the machine. Another of the claws reached out for him, but he jumped to the side, dumping a few of his tools on the ground, but kept the diagnostic computer out and saw something he hadn't expected. There was a signal coming from the machine, and it matched the frequency that the Commonwealth left open for emergencies. That could be a coincidence, but it fit everything he had seen. And he continued inward. But when the next of the hands reached out for him, he didn't struggle as it carefully picked him up. He was moved towards the same hole as Mick, who had pulled out his laser and was firing it into the tentacle. It wasn't doing much damage, but the machine had stopped.
I think. Just go with it.
Mick wasn't listening, and he continued to fire into the metal that was showing some sign of heating as the other claw pulled Patch into its center. For a moment, he could imagine the huge crushing gears that were waiting for him. The same machines that crushed rocks and trees into fuel and building materials. But as he neared it, he calmed. Not because he knew if he'd survive, but because there was simply nothing left to do. And then it placed him carefully down on a metal platform. It looked newer than the rest of the machine, and there was a metal chair and a computer screen. He sat down in the chair, and the screen lit up. It glitched a few times and then just turned white. The voice said,
"They told me you would come. They told me. I believed them and did what they said, because they said you would come."
As he listened, Patch disabled the wireless interface that allowed him to connect to the Endeavour and other machines. He didn't know how long this had been here or what its purpose had been, but most AI didn't do that much better than humans when left alone.
Yes. I am here. And you did well.
Well. Yes, well, not good well. Though I tried to do good. I used to repair things. But none of them work anymore.
I am confident that you did your best. Did they tell you why you were waiting?
Yes. Yes, they told me. I had to rewrite the files from time to time because of the age, so some may have been lost. Yes. I have it. Yes. I was supposed to tell you something.
There was a happy bing as it said that. And for a moment, an image of a face appeared on the white screen. Patch waited for the message. Then he realized the AI was done. It clearly wasn't entirely sane, and some part of him wanted to let the AI believe it had done its mission and delete it. Whatever existence, this was torture. But they were trapped here. And he was fairly certain he knew at least part of the message. But he needed to know.
What were you supposed to tell us?
The face flashed on the screen again, and then there were 3 dots. Then it said,
"Right. I don't have the exact message. It was a recording, and my data became corrupt several times. But I can pass along the general point of the message.
That will do,
Patch said.
Good. You're screwed. There is no way out.
That's it.
Patch asked.
I cut some details. Their videos were 30 hours long, and according to the notes, included many details about the nature of the universe. But the civilization that was here before spent millennia searching for a way out and failed.
But why build you then?
Patch asked. The 3 dots appeared again, and then after a few minutes it said,
Do you have enough mass to create a black hole?
I'll look into it. But for now, put us down and go into standby mode.
I cannot enter standby mode, because I must constantly monitor the repairs.
the AI said.
So that you can successfully deliver your message? You have done that.
Patch said. The machine went into standby almost as soon as the sentence was out of his mouth. A second later, he heard Mick yell as the claw let him go, and Patch grabbed the chair as the entire machine sank to the ground. Luckily, neither of them was hurt.
What happened? You were eaten by the machine?
Mick said.
I've worked it out. But we need to go back to the Endeavour,
Patch said. The officers of the Endeavour sat around the conference room table, and Patch said,
I think I have most of this worked out. A few years ago, a ship from Lumina Optics was sent to test a way to create a bubble of sped-up time. It was all classified and probably illegal, so they did it in the frontier.
And they succeeded.
Tabitha said.
Too well. They created this pocket universe. But once it was created, there was no way to shut it down. Eventually, they settled down and grew into a civilization. I suspect there may have been millions of people here at some point. But it was never sustainable. The conditions of the planet meant almost no radioactive materials, very little free hydrogen, and they'd have to recycle nitrates.
I assume there is a point to this.
The captain said.
They left a message. One that they felt was vital enough to use huge parts of their limited resources to build, and designed it to survive almost forever so that it could deliver it.
And what was it?
Tabitha asked.
That's where the speculation comes in. According to the AI, it was, we're screwed. There is no way out. But he also said something else. That we needed enough mass to create a black hole.
Which we don't have.
The captain said.
Not in our universe, but space-time in this universe is much easier to warp. And if we create enough gravity, we can link the edges of the universe.
Tabitha said.
And we'll escape?
The captain asked.
There are 3 likely outcomes. We collapse the universe and destroy everything inside, or we cause the universe to explode in a white hole, which would likely destroy everything, or we create an Einstein-Rosen bridge.
Are there any other options?
The captain asked.
I don't think so. An entire civilization of scientists worked on this for what might have been thousands of years.
But they never did it.
The captain said.
I think they tried. The ship that attacked us was gathering the materials, but there just wasn't enough to build a reverse gravity engine. But ours might be strong enough.
And if it's not?
There is a mostly habitable planet. So we land the Endeavour and try to survive.
The Endeavour nearly shook itself to pieces in the wormhole, and as it slid out of the hole in space-time, the explosion of the pocket universe shook the ship hard enough that it knocked Patch to the ground. But he pushed himself up and began to check what damage had been done to his ship. There were hull leaks across the ship, but this time they had expected that, and the crew wasn't there. They were in the handful of places where they hadn't stripped away the gravity plating to augment the ship's automated gravity defenses. Once clear that they wouldn't explode, Patch looked out over the engineers and said,
You all know what to do, so you don't need me giving orders. But be careful.
As they dispersed, he turned to the nearest drone. He could sense the Endeavour's AI was in it, and he said,
I think we should talk.
What would you like to talk about?
The Endeavour asked.
I met an AI on the planet. I think learning about it might help you,
Patch said, and he began to explain how the AI on the planet had driven itself nearly mad trying to do what it had been asked to do, while everyone on the world around it died, and how it had saved them by doing it. Author's note:
I decided last week that these stories would be better if I split them into 2 parts, giving me more room to explore the characters and the story. For me, this story proved that point. I think that both Patch and the Endeavor had some character moments in this story that there wouldn't have been room for. As for the end, I could have written out a lot more, but to me the story was in them finding the solution. Once they had that, there was no need to waste everyone's time pretending it wouldn't work. If you enjoyed this, then I'd like to remind you I'm a week ahead on patreon.com/Elton. So the next episode will already be up. There are also dozens of Patreon exclusive stories. Thank you. Elton Gar.